Team OSI, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be globally. Just wanted to take this opportunity to execute our town hall meeting with all of you, specifically referencing the really uncertain times we have right now with COVID-19. I appreciate everybody taking the time to join us. As you may see, Chief and I are not in headquarters for this session. In fact, this is a great opportunity for me to be able to speak to all of you as the rumor mill may be flying. Yesterday afternoon, we had a confirmed positive test of an employee working in RKB for COVID-19. Now, that employee was not OSI and was not working on our wing of the headquarters building. But out of abundance of caution, we have removed everybody but the most mission essential, mission critical individuals from headquarters and have dispersed those few folks who were still in the building to work at alternate locations today while the building is being building's being cleaned. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood straight from me what we were dealing with at headquarters right now, and certainly ask for everybody's patience as we are even further dispersed in handling our issues. So I really wanted to be able to reinforce what you've heard from the Secretary of Defense this week, what you've heard from General Goldfein this week, but then also make sure I communicate with you exactly what this means within the context of OSI. And then, Chief, want to take our time with you to field your questions, your concerns, what you're hearing out there. So first is, just as the Secretary has pointed out, just as General Goldfein has pointed out, our number one priority through all of this is your health and safety. And I say that not only from the standpoint of our active duty members, of our civilian employees, but when I speak to that, I mean our reservists, I mean our contractors, and I mean our OSI family members who all stand the chance and are all at risk as we move through this time and we confront the virus head on. And our second priority, the second thing that we are really trying to wrestle with and is very flexible day to day, is how do we incorporate that into our mission execution? Every conversation at headquarters and our conversations with the regions, with our field leaders, begins and ends with how are we mitigating risk to you, while also making sure we get after the mission. So in order to try to enable this as best we can, I hope everybody saw my email yesterday, which reinforced guidance we had given out through the beginning of the week, that the standing order for all of our field units is that you are in a telework situation. That we understand there will be special circumstances where the office needs to come together, they need to rally, they need to do some things as a team while they're practicing social distancing, doing the things to take care of each other. But day to day, I expect folks to be at home, to be isolating as much as possible to maintain our readiness. Now, of course, we realize there are parts of the mission that have to happen in the office. There are check-ins that have to occur, and there is operational activity that must go on. What I've asked for in those cases is that leaders exercise shift work wherever it is possible, go down to the smallest necessary teams available to be able to respond or go out or come in to take care of that part of the mission, but then as soon as possible to disperse, to get back to individual locations. It is imperative that we maintain the readiness of our force as we look at this being a long-term new norm, 60, 90 days, but then we need to be thinking about in terms of this being longer, and then be happy if our experts and our senior leadership comes back to let us know we can end earlier. To give you some idea of how this is playing out at headquarters, very early in the week, we instituted a dispersal plan among the most senior leadership in the command. Mr. Sunderbrook is working at North Cape at his residence location, and occasionally down at the Pentagon when the most sensitive information needs to come in that he needs access to. I am working from headquarters, but trying to maintain the minimum time necessary in the office to make those decisions that have to be made there, and then moving out as soon after. Of course, Colonel Knuckles, Chief Beirne-Flint, as our right arms at headquarters and in the top four, are now alternating their schedules to be in the office a week and then teleworking a week, so that I am able to keep them separated and available. And then, of course, the rest of our front office team is working from alternate locations, teleworking if at all possible, and again, if they are in the office for the minimal amount of time. So I've appreciated everybody's patience and everybody's understanding as we work to remain as responsive as possible while maintaining our own adherence to the Secretary and General Goldfein's plan to keep us separated. And then finally, I would like to speak to our partners because both the Secretary and General Goldfein have talked about our need to keep our global mission up and going. Certainly for OSI, we have our key partners with local and state law enforcement, federal law enforcement, our intelligence community, and then the international partners. We are making it very clear to those partners that while we are suspending engagements with them and suspending face-to-face meetings whenever and wherever possible, that this is for their protection as well as our protection, and that as soon as we are able to re-engage with them, we'll be right on top of our meetings and who we need to work with. Great example of this, our sister agencies from NCIS, Army CID, the Coast Guard Investigative Service, all leaned in this week as we were, as agency heads, all talking together to reinforce the fact that if we have leads being done throughout the country to make sure we're not only thinking about having to make tough choices to send folks into potential high threat areas, but to let each other know that we have NCIS agents, Army CID agents, and Coast Guard agents who are available across the country to be able to levy and work leads to prevent our personnel from having to be on the road, having to transit, and having to expose themselves to high risk, which I thought was just a phenomenal example of everybody rolling up their sleeves and getting in. And before I turn it over to Chief, just a couple more points. Major General Shack, our Air Force chaplain, this week sent a personal note to me after seeing some of the traffic that he sees at the headquarters Air Force level, seeing that OSI agents were continuing to get the mission done, continuing to do things, CONUS and OCONUS, and he passed on his well wishes, his prayers, and that we were in his thoughts as OSI agents continued to find creative ways that mitigated risk to our folks, but continued to protect the Air Force every day. And I wanted to make sure that you had that personal message from him. And then finally, I continue to be so proud of each and every one of you as we hear constant examples now, just over the past couple of days, of how units and unit leaders are making phenomenal decisions in very tough circumstances to, again, balance protecting their folks with getting mission examples done. Just this morning had wonderful correspondence with our team out at Kirtland, who were posed with a tough situation of individuals who weren't already feeling well, who were self-quarantining, and then having to then lean in and execute a vital operation to apprehend an individual. And I hear vignettes like this. I hear examples coming from the field of how we are still able to get the mission done, how leaders are taking care of their people, moving them into quarantine right away, understanding what mission impact that has to their unit, but at the same time understanding our direction, that readiness over the long haul has to be the main priority, and 14 days of quarantine is far better than losing an entire team and that team becoming ill and taking the chance that they then take that home to their families. So I love to hear those stories. And so I thank you for that leadership up front at the tactical level. So, Chief, I've gone on long enough, so over to you.
Well, thank you, sir, and I just want to say thank you for your leadership and guidance during this time. And as you already indicated, this could be very stressful for a lot of different families, and it is more important now than ever that we stay connected as an OSI family. A lot of times being at home teleworking, especially when you have family around, could be exceptionally stressful, and so it's even more important that we stay together and through different means, whether it's FaceTime or LinkedIn or link messages or whatever it takes, just to make sure that we stay connected as an OSI family. And let's not forget those members of airmen that have been TDY and are currently stuck at those TDY locations, and our deployed members, that they have family members that are also going through this. And don't forget to reach out and connect with them to make sure that they don't need anything during this time. We have a lot of families that may not be able to get out, and so make sure that we're staying together and helping each other through this. And this is inconvenient to us, but we can get through this. There is very little that we can't get through. But as long as we stay together as a family, we're going to do just fine.
So I know that the main thrust of this was to make sure that we heard your questions, your concerns about what you were experiencing out there. In the spirit of being dispersed, Major Womble, part of our PA team and social media task force, is actually at her residence right now, receiving your questions, and is on the cell phone that you see here with us on the table. To be able to read the questions off to us and let us know what you're thinking. I do want to add that, of course, in the time that we have, we won't be able to get to all questions, and then some of you may have very local, very specific questions, which, of course, then the social media task force and our PA team, if we don't have time or have the information here to cover down on those, we will make sure that those questions go into our COVID-19 task force or go to the appropriate region or directorate to get answered, and then we'll get those answers back out to you through this medium or through any other that's appropriate. So with that, Major Womble, I turn it over to you for any of our first questions.
Yes, sir. We have great questions coming in from throughout the field. The first one is asking how many people have been quarantined, have they been tested, and do we have any positives in OSI?
Okay, great question. And I'm glad we get to address this right up first. So to answer the initial part of the question, we have had individuals who have been exposed to situations where we have asked them to self-quarantine. We have had individuals who have not felt well that we have directed to self-quarantine. Right now, we do not have any confirmatory testing positive individuals in the command who have tested for COVID-19. That information has flowed up to the task force. We continue to monitor that with our regions very closely, and it is a very fluid situation. So I'm hesitant to give any numbers on those that are self-quarantined, those that are out there, because that number is transitioning, and leaders are doing the right thing by being cautious and at the first signs of any illness, sending folks home. What I will say is that General Goldfein, in his comments earlier this week, mentioned that throughout the entire Air Force, we had only had 7 positive tests up until the point of his press conference. So, which he knocked on wood, and I will do the same here, that thus far our containment procedures, our dispersal of the force, our liberal use of telework, shift work seems to be allowing for a minimal impact on the force right now. And of course, we are all hoping and praying that trend will continue, and we will keep those numbers very low.
The next question, sir, are there any updates that we expect to be coming out for our deployers?
We continue to get constant updates from the combatant commanders who have responsibility for the areas where our agents and pro staff and contractors are currently deployed and working. We are working through that with our headquarters team. I think while what we can say at this point is that we do believe that deployments will be affected, meaning that folks will experience delays in coming out of deployed locations as they quarantine to ensure that they are not bringing it, the virus back to their loved ones or back to the States. We may also see, and we'll definitely see situations where deployed members get home and also quarantine as well before they come back into the office. So I think combatant commanders at each location are assessing their risk. They are putting out the best guidance that they have at the time. That guidance is transitional in nature. What I will promise you is that as we get definitive guidance, as we get that direction, that our COVID-19 task force is doing a phenomenal job of moving daily messages to the region, PF and PJ leadership to then be able to move that down to those affected members.
Okay, sir, there's quite a few questions coming in about PCSing. The first one, those who are due to PCS after current stop movement expires around the June, July, August timeframe, should they out-process and schedule a household goods? Somebody already addressed the household goods portion on the comments, so maybe just the, should they start to out-process?
So what I would encourage every member to do, because every situation is very unique, very individual. We've tackled several issues this week alone with folks caught in transition, with individuals caught in situations that had financial impact. What I would stress to all of our members, whether active duty, civilian, our family members who may be in a situation where there was a follow-on assignment after a deployment, what I would stress is that you stay in touch with your local and headquarters personnel functions to get the latest guidance on exactly what steps we need to take, when you are cleared to take actions like selling a home or beginning the household goods piece, things of that nature. That guidance, again, because we're on the front end of this, still remains incredibly flexible, very transitory in nature. So I would say to the members' comfort level, if that is daily, if that is weekly, based on your circumstance, to reach out, talk to your personnel staff, again, at the region, at the base, even here at headquarters, to get the latest guidance on what we have.
And I would say that that's very important, because as we go through this as an Air Force family, there's a lot of things that we don't understand the implications to. So please, 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 please raise up your concerns, because every day the Air Force Personnel Center is coming out with new guidance and new procedures to handle all these very unique situations based on individual issues. So absolutely raise them up so we know what they are and we can find a resolution for them.
That is such a great point. Please, I can't stress enough for our family members who are out there who may be dealing with this while their loved one is separated or gone for whatever reason. Please don't suffer in silence. Please don't feel like you're alone in trying to work through this. Our region level personnelists, our headquarters personnelists, our COVID-19 task force are here for you to reach out to. We need to know those individual circumstances so that we can help point you in the right direction, help get you the assistance that you need, and get you talking to the right folks. It always concerns me when folks are making decisions based on less than accurate information or rumor or conjecture. What I would ask is that you don't be bashful, don't be hesitant, reach out to one of those sources, and we will get you in the right direction, and we will get you the answers that you need.
And if you're frustrated, I'm going to put a plug in for your chief, sir, because your chiefs are all over it. Reach out to your chief, and we'll get the answers for you if you're being frustrated by the system.
Okay, next question.
And that's a wonderful question, and one that I will tell you, just having been up at the Pentagon yesterday, that I will tell you our senior leaders are struggling with, and also trying to do the best with the intelligence that's available and the information available coming in from the CDC, coming in from the military's own medical arm, which is completely engaged in this. I will tell you that right now, the definitive guidance we have from the SecDef has not changed, which is for all planning assumptions, we need to plan on this being at least 60 days. I know that our most senior leaders in the department and we, as the senior leadership within OSI, are watching this closely and already having planning discussions on the potential that this goes longer. What I will say is that as soon as we have any word that definitively says we are moving beyond that 60 days, we will move that out, move that through the leadership chain to get that out. And I've been very impressed with SecDef Esper, with General Goldfein, with General Raymond, on how they have leaned in to make sure that our entire forces understand the best solid information we have at this time. So I would say do all that you can. Use the 60 days as the lockdown planning assumption, but prepare yourself and think about sustaining this over a longer period if we're asked to do so.
Next are questions about our connectivity and resources. When will we have our own dedicated version of Desktop Anywhere? Connectivity to resources is limited. Does current posture reinforce the need of our own system in the cloud?
Yes, and that's a wonderful question. And before COVID-19 and before we were faced with some of these things, in discussions of Orion, of course, the successor system to I2MS, in discussion of our own network issues, in discussion of our laptop and tablet situation and the level that those are at right now, there were already discussions happening of the movement to the cloud. There were already discussions of making sure that we were in line with the intent to move our operations there for just these situations, for coup procedures and what we needed to do to be able to survive and operate as a command. We are working hard through the COVID-19 task force to continually find new ways to promote connectivity. I know that at the highest levels of the DoD, they are now hearing that connection is not great, that everyone is suffering through these same things, and they are doing all they can as rapidly as they can to begin to expand on our capability for connectivity. So across the department, we are seeing this and hear everybody's concerns. Mr. Elmore and the XI Directorate continue to give the most up-to-date information, which our COVID task force will push down on tricks of the trade, on how to connect. We are asking folks, if you have to use VPN, that you only go on to VPN to update your email, to pull down the most recent things that you absolutely need, and then to back off of the network so that we can minimize the number on there, we can minimize the delay in the system, and then we will continue to push out guidance on new ways to be able to connect.
Okay, sir, you hit on a lot of the questions that were asked, so I'll move on to back to deployment, actually. The question is training and deployment delayed, or will it still proceed as normal?
So will deployment training be delayed or proceed? it will really be dependent on what the COCOMs need us to do, and as long as we are continuing our deployment cycle, we will continue our training cycle, because that is mission essential. So yes. Did that answer the question?
It did, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Scrolling down to the next one.
Awesome.
So that other question back on the connectivity, is there any plans for us to get our own VPN server?
Right now, so I mean, great timing on the question, because just yesterday the air staff sent down a tasker asking for, already gathering lessons learned, already looking at where we could move funding that we may be saving from some areas into others. Thus far, no specific discussion of a dedicated VPN line, no discussion of service-specific or agency-specific dedicated systems yet, but a lot of discussion at the enterprise level on what are the higher order solutions, what are the higher order things we need to be doing for the network to be able to improve connectivity. And it brings me to a point that I should have hit earlier, and that I just want to put assurances out there for our field level leaders, for my region commanders, and for our agents and pro staff in the field. And that is, we expect operations to slow down. We expect that investigations will take longer. We expect proactive things to be moved to the side to preserve ourselves for those reactive things that we know will come in the door. So as our individuals and the types of individuals that we recruit are incredible, motivated individuals who want to be hitting on top cylinders at all times, and we love that and appreciate that about our workforce, and it's what makes our command special. During this time frame, no matter how long it runs, we fully expect, again, investigations to take longer, things to slow down, only those most critical things to happen, and that responses may take days instead of hours. That our metrics and measures for delivering things will go beyond what our targets are normally for. We are okay with that. As a command, we fully accept that because it is part and parcel of taking care of you. So I know folks are frustrated with the connectivity. Chief and I are as well. And as we work from our alternate locations and do our part to stay connected, we too are kicked off the system. We too are denied access for longer periods of time. So if we're experiencing that at our level, if members at the Pentagon are experiencing that at that level throughout the Air Force and the Space Force, then we all have to come to terms and accept the fact that things will just naturally take longer. They will not move as quickly, and if we can't connect and it can't be resolved with a phone call, then we may just be delayed in some of our responses. We may, be delayed in investigations for this period. We won't be as proactive as we like to be as a command. But every bit of that comes back to, I would rather be slower, I would rather things take longer than run the risk of putting anybody in harm's way that doesn't absolutely need to be.
That also allows us to come up with different ways of getting the job done. I mean, if we can't do face-to-face, use technology as much as we can, come up with different ways of getting the mission done, so it's not, if you have, like, for example, if you have to do that interview, there's a lot of different ways to do an interview. You don't have to be face-to-face all the time. But of course, it mission requires, based on mission.
Okay, next up is a question on TONUS travel. There is conflicting guidance coming out about how to treat travel within the states. Do folks need to self-quarantine if they've traveled TONUS? The guidance that had been given was that if you traveled to a state that was under a state of emergency, that you had to self-quarantine. But now that
No, I would say that, and again, every case is very specific, so this becomes a direct conversation between the location that you're departing from and your leadership there, and the leadership that you're traveling to, and what they're experiencing at their locations. What I am asking is that we use them, that we move to the maximum when it comes to taking precautions, meaning the utilization of quarantine once arriving in a new location, because certainly there is the concern of moving from one location to another, and as all the states move to that, we certainly understand that there's questions of, okay, well, if I could operate there, why could I not operate in another location? A lot of these concerns come with the nature of travel itself between those points. The fact that whether that is air travel or even over ground travel, that we are still exposed to more individuals who are also in a transitory state. So we will continue to refine that guidance through the task force. But what I am asking field commanders to do is to take the highest level of precaution, that if we deem a PCS, if we deem a TDY mission essential in execution, that we accept the fact that once that person has arrived, they will go into a 14-day quarantine, again, to preserve, their health, the health of the team that they are arriving at, and their family's health, and the families of those others on the team, to ensure that we're postured best to maintain readiness over the long term.
Okay, next up, are there any interim changes to the current OSI death decision guide regarding suspected COVID-related deaths? We've seen the guidance for PPE, but any other specific limitations rather than treating it like a normal crime scene?
So I would say that any crime scene at this point is considered a hazmat situation, and you'd go in prepared like you would any other hazmat situation. So yes, this is not going to be a normal crime scene like we used to handle it. Now we have to make sure that we're being protected, even if you don't know if they've tested positive. I would go in assuming that it's already there, and just go in prepared and have the right protective gear on, regardless.
And so no change that I think that we're aware of now. Again, things could remain fluid, and we're learning new things from the field as they encounter situations, and we incorporate that into refined guidance and further guidance as we go. I will tell you that one of the discussions that we just had yesterday among the senior leadership team involved our acquisition of protective gear, of the need to add to the list of those things that we have at the headquarters Air Force level of protective gear, and the things that we need to be thinking about as we think about sustaining this over the long term, how we will go about acquiring that and making folks aware. But just as the chief mentioned, I can't stress enough as we talk about the conservative nature of scenes, or the current situation, and as we approach scenes, that any precaution that unit is able to take, or that they deem appropriate based on the history of the individual before being found deceased, certainly any medical information we have about that individual, that every bit of that is incorporated into the decision, and that the highest or next level of protective gear being employed for that is utilized.
And that may not even be just death scenes. That could be potentially any crime scene that we would go in.
Absolutely. I think stopping, slowing down, asking a few extra questions before we enter that scene is absolutely appropriate, and then donning the appropriate gear and waiting for that gear to be made available or located, again, is my preference over exposing somebody when it's not mission essential.
Next up, sir, a question from a spouse of a deployed agent. She's wondering, or he is wondering, their spouse is supposed to come back at the end of April, but now they don't know when they'll get home. They haven't had anybody reaching out to them to give them any answers. They've just been getting it from their deployed spouse. wondering how that can be improved and what to expect.
And I will tell you, absolutely, in this circumstance, going back to Chief's original comments, my expectation for units in the field that have deployed members, that we are making positive contact on a regular basis with the families of those deployed members, that we are providing any and all information that we can. I am so glad, number one, to hear that this spouse has contact with their family member downrange, is discussing their situation and what they're, what they are able to hear. But that needs to be supplemented by my leaders in the field, by units in the field, and what they've gone through. And while we have that question, and hopefully that person is listening in, as we do with all of our family members, I want to thank you for the sacrifice, while your loved one has been gone. And we can always, and this is collective among all of us, we can always do a better job of supporting our family members of those who are deployed on extended TDYs. So I would urge you to certainly, if your unit has not been proactive in reaching out, I would ask you to make contact with that unit leadership. Let them know that you are concerned about the information. And then my expectation of that field leader is that they would then kick in along with that unit to establish better communications with them.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, the next comment / question is regarding mental health. So having to quarantine for a long period of time can have serious impact on mental health, especially if weather impacts the ability to spend time outside. How will the command psychologists be helping to support mental health within our command? And is there any guidance for leadership to check on their people?
Absolutely, there's guidance, and again, I started out by saying it's more important now than ever that we maintain close contact with our OSI family and their family members, because again, this is very stressful. It's not in norm with what we're accustomed to doing every day, and it brings a whole new set of circumstances that we're not accustomed to dealing with. So yes, now our employee assistance program is ready to assist. But you have to reach out. They're not just they're not going to know if you're having issues. So please, please, please continue to reach out to Doc Schwenk and the team if you need help. You can use the base resources. All the resources that have always been there are still there today, your chain of command. But it is up to the leadership teams, and I do expect our field leaders to be checking in every day with their folks to make sure that everything that they get what they need. Some families aren't able to get out, especially if you're quarantined and you may have small children in the house and you can't get to the store. We need to come together now more than ever. And so DO 300 is still ongoing every single day. We're not stopping just because we're not in the office. We have to come up with better ways, more, different ways of finding ways to come and talk, and FaceTiming with our family members, FaceTiming with the teams. No, absolutely. I'm very passionate about that. Yes, we need to sustain our mental health just like any other time, and yes.
So this concerns, and I know it concerns the chief, and it concerns me enough that here's what we'll do. And I'm looking at Lieutenant Colonel Holland off camera here, that we will direct in the coming days that field leaders make 100% contact with their families of deployed members, to make positive contact with them, to assess whatever those needs may be, just as the chief was pointing out, if they are shut in, if they are quarantined, if they are limited based on the fact that they are caring for young children or elderly members of the family as well. We will direct that 100% contact, and then in the coming days we will make sure that we come back over with contact information for not only our employee assistance program, but with DoD points and programs as well. And we will put that on our social media platforms as well. I encourage our members across the force and our families If you have not been on our official social media platforms, our COVID task force and social media task force are pushing a Herculean effort to get any and all relevant information, and we have we've moved off a lot of command information to allow for more COVID direction, more COVID information to be placed into the systems. We will make sure through all of those sources as well that our employee assistance program, that other DoD programs, and I encourage you, please don't forget that your base resources, base mental health, are available as well as some extremely capable DoD resources to be able to reach out to, because these are incredibly stressful, demanding times. Beyond just the concern of loved ones getting sick, yourself getting sick, it is causing a lot of second and third order effects that will drive stressors in families, even those families that are not directly affected. So can't stress, and I am really glad that we got the question, and we will make sure that we direct some better engagement all the way from here as well.
And sir, can I ask, our IMAs across the field, now if I understand that a lot of us are in hubs to this day, but if you are near an Air Force detachment, please reach out to that detachment leadership team if you need anything, because we're there for you too. So please, as an IMA family, if there's anything you need, contact your closest detachment and we'll support you that way.
Great point, Chief. Thanks.
Okay, next question. Why was Robins Air Force Base able to rapidly deploy desktop anywhere, but we as FOA cannot?
And I would, and I'll start off and then certainly turn it over to Chief. I'm not aware and can't speak to the situation or how Robins was postured or where we are. I know in speaking from macro terms, there's a big difference between a local wing and an Air Force base that is able to operate in a local community and what we have there, and then our OSI that's comprised of over 3,000 organizations at 260 locations worldwide. We ride the backbones of a lot of our bases. We utilize their communication networks as well. And so for us, it is it's a very different problem set as far as what we're rolling out. As I mentioned earlier, we are attempting to tackle that as best we can. Our XI Directorate under Mr. Elmore and his team are constantly looking for other communication systems and ways that we can work through this. I will say as well, this presents an excellent opportunity for us as a command to learn and take every one of these challenges that we are facing right now, every one of the limb facts that we have, to make ourselves better for the next situation and the next time that we're faced with this.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Okay, next question, sir, is regarding performance reports. With such a long period of inactivity, will performance reports be effective?
Currently, no. We're still going to evaluate the performance that we have and write them accordingly. So,
and I think supervisors, will naturally take that into account. Will naturally take that, take that in mind as we're going through that. And of course, as an entire force, as a command, we all understand the timing. We all understand the situation that we're in right now. And I would expect, large Air Force, the personnel system, to then react accordingly and to, take that into consideration for this cycle and any others that could be affected in that way. Hopefully, certainly everyone has received the guidance for physical fitness testing now being suspended and new tests being put into place. And then hopefully everybody saw our guidance yesterday with the letter that I signed discontinuing or pushing out qualification and profire for the field, again, to keep people from having to come in, from having to expose themselves to potential situations. So while we don't have strong guidance on that, we would look to the Air Force to see if they would provide guidance in the future on OPRs, EPRs, and civilian ratings.
Okay, sir, there's been just a couple comments just to get it out on the line as well. Just reminding folks that IMAs are here to support the command too, so they want to help.
Absolutely. And Jen, I apologize if I could. I just want to comment on that because again, as we talk about these examples of what we are seeing from our units in the field and how they are managing to balance this and get mission done, I have been so incredibly impressed and honored by the fact that we have had so many of our reserve, our IMAs lean in and ask what they can do to help put themselves on the line to say, even if it's moving into a high-risk location, that they are willing to serve and ready to step up. And it's humbling and inspiring to watch and to hear. What I would stress to my IMA members is just as we do that balance on the active duty side, I count on you as that strategic reserve. I count on you to make sure that if we get ourselves into a longer period of time, you are part of our readiness equation. So I appreciate that lean in. I need you to stay ready. I need you to stay as available as possible because depending on where we go with this, more and more we may have to turn to you. So thank you for that comment, and thank you for making sure that we spoke to it directly.
Yes, sir. And then a question from an IMA. What about IMAs whose CED orders expire during the stop movement? Will their orders be automatically extended to minimize impact? For example, TRICARE benefits for their families back home.
And so daily, Colonel Adrian Peterson, our Reserve Affairs Officer, is in contact with RIO, is in contact with the Reserve Personnel Center, and is moving, information out specific to orders, to IDTs, to annual tours. We just tackled an issue today concerning reserve members returning back from TDYs and would their 14 days of quarantine be covered by NPA. So we're seeing these come out on a regular basis. So I would encourage folks, please, move those questions, those very specific questions up through Colonel Peterson, and she will make sure to get you vectored in the right direction for your specific circumstance on the timing to make sure we do the best by you and that we do the best by your family.
Okay, sir, a question on leave. Is there any talk at the headquarters level about blanket extensions of leave accumulation caps beyond 60 days to account for those who are in use or lose status and can't take leave?
And that's a great question, and one that is, I think, certainly being discussed at the Air Force level as leave as an Air Force program. And just as we've done with extending with deployers in the past, I'm sure just as we mentioned with the rating conversation, these larger programs that are outside of OSI's direct control, but certainly within the Air Force's span of control and DOD's span of control, that they will do everything within legal limits to ensure that our members, preserve that leave to the legal limits possible.
Yes, sir. Air Force, they are looking at that, and we probably will see guidance coming out on that in the next couple of weeks.
Great, thanks.
Next up, is there any talk of civilian agents being asked to support local or federal law enforcement?
It's a great question. So there's been there were a lot of discussion. If you saw the press conference and statement made by the Secretary of Defense, specifically there was a lot of discussion of mobilization of the Guard, mobilization of the Reserve. Have we reached that point? What I would say is that at the most senior levels of the DoD, every potential is on the table. Planning is going on along all lines for the most extreme circumstance. to the question specifically right now, have we, OSI, has NCIS, has Army CID been called on? There has been no discussion about that at the agency head level. No policy to begin or planning efforts to have been pushed to us thus far. I would say stay tuned with our COVID task force, stay tuned with our social media sites, stay tuned with your local leadership, but as of right now, that request has not been made to us, nor have we been asked to plan for it.
Okay, sir. What about Region 4 detachments that are being told that teleworking is a suggestion and being put on shift work when they are not pressing concerns at work?
Okay. So I would say definitively, and this goes across my regions, across my directorates, from my headquarters, I cannot make it any more clear. Telework is not a suggestion. Telework is the standard and is the day-to-day operating posture we are in until we receive differing guidance from DOD or from the Department of the Air Force. I would say, and again, Jen, can you repeat the second part of that question for me?
Yes, sir. So the whole question, what about Region 4 detachments that are being told teleworking is a suggestion and being put on shift work when there are not pressing concerns?
Okay. So to the second part of that question, I would say that my field leaders absolutely have the authority, and just as I mentioned in the opening statements, telework and shift work are the order of the day. We don't know when situations at a location, at a specific base, within a specific community may take a turn. So telework and shift work are important in maintaining our readiness, not after a situation has become more critical, but before. So again, I want to be very, very clear here. If you are in an OSI unit right now, I expect my leaders to be balancing mission with personal safety. I expect telework or dispersed work to be the order of the day. When that is not possible, that shift work be employed to maintain a portion of the office as ready to go. As this continues, and if we see this continue longer, and that mission essential questions need to be made very deliberately when bringing everybody together to execute, and then as soon as that mission element is done, we need to resume telework or shift work based on what is appropriate at your location.
What have we learned, and how will OSI change going forward following the experiences we've had with COVID-19?
And that's a wonderful question, and one that we would be remiss to not take advantage of this. So I think, as I mentioned earlier in our comments, Chief and I were part of a telecon meeting yesterday, speaking directly to that we need to be prepared as a United States military, certainly as OSI, certainly as an Air Force and Space Force, and as a department, but DOD, for this to be a reality going into the future. And I can tell you, within the Department of the Air Force, that conversation is already happening. Within the senior levels here at headquarters, that conversation is already happening. How do we gather these lessons learned? Does it reinforce decisions we have already made about moving to the cloud, about how Orion will be built versus I2MS in the future? Are we postured, or can we posture better in the take-home equipment that we have, with the availability of official duty phones? All of these things will be things that we will absolutely take as lessons learned and bring back from this. So if it is a pandemic issue in the future, if it's another national security issue in the future, that we are not only smarter for it, I would look to our services in the future to exercise this more, to identify these things and get better and better and better.
about if there's any changes for that.
Okay. Again, that is a UCOM decision. USAFE, working in coordination with UCOM on the policy directives that will come out. Of course, we, as OSI, as a supporting command to those efforts, will work along the current guidance that we have. And if that guidance changes, we will move as quickly and appropriately as possible to implement. I have not had any inside conversations specifically to UCOM or USAFE on any changes, but certainly as soon as we are made aware of any guidance changes, we will move that through our COVID task force team. We will move that through our social media forums. We will move that through command chains, and certainly it is something that all of our OCONUS region commanders and CONUS region commanders are part of a 2-time-a-week telecon where we are elevating the latest concerns, we are talking through the latest policy changes, the implications for us. So we have a constant line open to regions 2, 5, and 6 for those regular meetings, and then of course any questions that they have are being pushed to Colonel Knuckles and or the COVID task force team to answer immediately. So if that guidance does change, we will make sure to push that out as soon as possible.
Sir, that pretty much wraps up the questions that we have online. Is there anything else that you'd like to add as we close, sir?
Okay, Chief.
Sir, I just want to say we are so impressed with how you're all handling this. You're going after it day in and day out, despite all the challenges that we've been facing and some of the concerns that you brought up. We appreciate you, and if there is anything that we can do, please, our virtual door is always open. We want to hear from you, and we want to find the best way to get our family through this. So I, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys for what you do for us every single day.
Chief, I couldn't say it any better. Thank you for our folks in the field who, again, are finding incredible ways to get the job done, and we will continue to highlight those ways, share those ways as we move forward. To our OSI family members, thank you for the support to your part of our team and what you're doing to take care of them and understanding the risk that's exposed and that they are doing what is absolutely mission essential only when necessary. We thank you for your support to that. To my field leaders and to my headquarters leaders, thank you. I know that every single one of you have had to step up, are making tough decisions every single day, multiple times a day, taking the guidance that you have and interpreting it the best that you can within your context. We have a lot of faith and trust in you, in what you're doing to make sure that we balance taking care of our folks with getting those mission essential things done that have to get done. And then again, I want everyone to understand that we know things will slow down. We know things may get more strict before they become less strict. And I just emphasize to you, depend on each other. Don't let the distance affect communication, whether that's telephone, whether that's texting, whether that's online. Stay together because we will get through this together because we are together and because the OSI family is incredibly strong. It's going to be tested as we move forward, but I have full faith we're all going to get through this. Thanks.